Hello YouTube, this is Geeky Austin, and today we are going to take a look at the SH Figuarts Super Saiyan Son Goku Super Warrior Awakening version. Once again, detail and paint wise, this is another great example from the SH Figuarts company making a really good looking Goku figure. The only downside is that the accessories are not a lot, coming only with 4 pairs of hands and 2 alternate faces. Goku stands at just about 6.5 inches tall at the top of his hair, and here he is next to the SH Figuarts Super Saiyan Vegeta and the Figuarts Standard Final Form Frieza. Now on to detail. The detail on this figure, once again as I stated, is another great example from SH Figuarts. You can see all the wrinkles in his chest right there, on his arms, his biceps, on his wrist, all the cloth on his shirt, his pants. They did a good job here, and as for the tear effect on his clothing, once again is a really good job all around every part on here, and even though it does hinder some of the articulation, I must go ahead and say they did a great job at covering up a lot of the joints using these tears in the fabric. Very nice job, Figuarts. Very, very good job. And as for paint wise, pretty much Goku's got a nice shade of green in his eyes, brown in his eyebrows. Hopefully I can be picked up a bit. I don't know how the lighting on this is. But yeah, got nice shades of orange and gold inside of his hair, which is very nice. The blues on his shirt, his belt, and his wrists are very nicely done as well. There's actually not a whole lot of shading on shading with the painting on his shirt and his pants. It's basically just sculpted to give off the shade effects, which that can still work. Same as his boots. Once again, there's about no kind of shading on there. It's like pretty much for shading wise, all they did was added some shading effects on his chest, his face, and his hair. But still, the paint job wise, it is really good. I can give them credit for that. It's still really good looking. And as for articulation, just like some of the other Figuarts, Goku has a ball joint hinge inside of his neck, which allows him to look up that far, down that much, and you can rotate the head all the way around. His elbows, his shoulders are on a ball hinge as well. You can move them all around like that, and you can bring his arms up about that far and can rotate them all the way around. And also it's got a special type of hinge in here on this little flap. It's similar to what the Figuarts Standard Final Form Frieza had. You can grab his shoulders and you can pull out this extra piece right here to make his arms extend further forward. So that way you can get his arm almost all across his front of his body, which is a really nice little effect right there. And he's got a swivel right there underneath his shoulder, double jointed elbow, and a ball hinged wrist right there. For the torso's on a ball joint. It can go in that much, up that far, but because of the hindering on the fabric on his chest, you can hear that crackling right there. Yeah, it's not very easy to do much swiveling on this joint. And again, there's a ball joint down here inside of his torso, but this is something that these newer these newer versions of Figuarts have done. Basically, the older ones, you could grab the torso, you could pop it up, and that way you could get a lot more rotation out of their joints and the waist. But for this figure here, and some of the other ones I've seen, they got rid of this. So pretty much all that you can do with this joint is you can pretty much rotate it all the way around. That's about all you can do. And the belt is loose and free, so you don't have to worry about it getting in the way too much. The legs, right here, this is where these new guys have shined the most. Excuse me, but I had to go and grab a different figure so I could give a good example about the modification on the hip joints. This right here, of course, is the SH Figuarts Ultimate Son Gohan. I can't remember when he was released, but he is one of the earlier examples of these types of articulation and molds. And his entire body is pretty much just what the original Goku was. That was like one of the first ever releases back years ago. So it can give it's a good example to compare what I'm talking about with the new joints. Now, if let me get Goku's belt out of the way so you can see. Basically, what they have done is, this is what it looked like. It was just this one solid piece right here on the hip, and on the inside you had this little ball joint right here, which is connected into this little piece here, which allows the leg to swivel on, so that way you could get the leg to do those kind of movements, move up that far, you know, that kind of stuff. For what Figuarts did, it's still really good and it does work. The only downside is that you can see those ugly joints depending on where you put it, and the same can be for the back. You can even see them right there depending on how you have it positioned inside the hips. With this figure here and onwards, this seems to be what they're going with now. That is no longer there. As you can see, that is gone. You no longer see that ugly joint, which is good, and it can still give you some good range of movement. So overall, basically, on the new hip system, this here is a definite improvement, and it's something that I'm sure everybody is happy they finally did. But I still will have a soft spot for the original way it looked. But as long as Figuarts keeps using this, I'm sure lots of people that collect these will be very happy. Okay, and as for the rest of the articulation, right here in the knees, he's got a double hinge joint, which can bring his knees up about that far. And right here, as I mentioned earlier about the way how this joint is hidden, right here is a swivel joint, which can allow you to rotate the legs about that much and over that far. You can't rotate it too much because it gets hindered by all the ripped pieces of cloth they've sculpted onto it. And the same can be on this side, about that and that right there. And only other than that, we got a ball joint in the feet, which can bring them up about that far, down that much, and even have a bit of an ankle rocker. Not too much, but it's there. And hinged toes. And that's it for the articulation. Not bad. It's just like any of the other Figuart figures. It's not bad for what you get. Now as for accessories, once again, this figure only comes with a set of 4 different hands and 2 faces. And right here are the faces. He comes also with a grinding face, teeth grinding face, and also with a screaming face, which is very accurate because Goku does a heck of a lot of screaming when he's a Super Saiyan. And as for the extra set of hands, he comes with these 2 posing hands, little karate style hands that you see with most of these Figuart figures. He comes also with his Kamehameha blasting hands right there, where you can hold it charging or blasting them. He also comes with his little ki blasting hands, which are wide open palms. Also very nice. And lastly, he comes with these two clenching hands, which I'm assuming that you can use them to grasp onto items. Like, for example, Frieza's tail. Frieza's tail, anyone's arms or legs, you can probably use these to grasp onto something with. And that's it. Nothing else. That's pretty much the standard for some figures, but for this Super Saiyan variant, it would have actually been cool if maybe he came with his own blasting effect, maybe even included the little charging aurora that you can buy separately. That probably would have been neat. But for what you get, it's still not bad. If anything at all, the figure itself right here is really what sells it off. Overall, once again, like I said, this is another good example from SH Figuarts. The detail and the paint are nicely well done. The articulation on it is really good, and actually in some areas is an improvement over the original versions. The accessories, again, I feel are lacking, but for what you get, for about $55, this is not at all a bad figure, and for anyone out there that's a Dragon Ball Z fan or even a Goku fan, definitely get this guy. You would not be disappointed. And thank you so much for watching. Okay, excuse me, but I had to go and grab a different figure to give a good example about the hip. Well,